Greetings, founding comrades, and welcome back to Bee's Knees, our little foundation town. I'm the clothing inspector, and you don't seem to be wearing any, so let's learn how to put on some pants. This is going to be a special episode serving as a mini tutorial as we explain how to set up the clothing industry. In order to create clothing, you will first need to unlock it. So let's take a look at the progression menu. It is in the common path, so you only need 10 prosperity and 50 gold in order to unlock the ability to produce it, and then another 50 to unlock the ability to distribute it to your people via the goods market. Before we begin, I will note that you can also buy clothing. You can buy it from Kinstone Abbey, but at 5 gold apiece, it's simply not worth it. And the trade limitations make it unsustainable to offer any long-term benefits to your realm. The only reason you might want to buy it is to get the 20 clothes you need in order to open trade with Middle before you've set up your clothing industry. If, for example, you've already set up your tools and fish and want to sell those. Realistically, the other options here, you're not going to have to sell. So you're really only selling tools and fish. But that amounts to 100 gold investment to open up this route, so the cost is still quite high. So I would just recommend setting up your clothing industry first. You might, however, consider buying cloth early on, despite its 4 gold apiece cost. So cloth you get from Northbury, which should be your first trade route. This is because cloth is used for a lot of early useful buildings, such as the market tents, which make your stalls more effective, and the stonemason hut, which can be a good source of early gold. So the market tents themselves add extra space to your market stalls, and the stonemason makes polished stone, which you can sell for 3 gold apiece. So those are really good, and getting the little 4 gold per cloth investment can make it worth it. Once you've set up your clothing industry, if you're buying cloth, it's really important to set it up in a way that you create excess cloth, because otherwise, if you're still buying cloth and your tailor's workshops are using it to make clothes, you're going to be spending a lot of money and all of that cloth is just going to get eaten. So part of the thing that complicates the cloth production chain process is that you want to actually produce a little surplus of a middle material that's in the middle of the chain. But don't worry about it, we'll go through all of that. So let's get to making our own clothes. The first thing you'll need is a lot of space, a large clearing basically, to turn into a pasture. The sheep farm tends to require more space than a single wheat farm, but the production in general serves a higher population. So these are 2 wheat farms, and I believe that a single sheep farm is going to be about the same size as these 2 wheat farms combined. So make sure that you buy the terrain, and if it's forested, you can always chop the trees down like I have, or if you need it done fast, you can use the resource removal tool. The resource removal is pretty fast, but it does destroy everything, so be pretty careful when you're painting because you could accidentally remove resources such as your iron nodes, stone nodes, or berry bushes, and all of those can be a little bit more valuable, especially the iron and stone, especially if your settings are that they are infinite. Okay, so let's unlock clothing. I'm going to do it step by step, so I'll just unlock the clothing production first. So this gives us 3 buildings. The aforementioned sheep farm creates wool. Then the weaver hut uses that wool to create cloth. Then the tailor's workshop takes the cloth and creates clothes. Space-wise, the farm is going to be the star of the show with its massive painted pasture, while the weaver hut and the tailor's workshop are regular production buildings and you can squeeze them together or even clip them into one another. They have pretty compatible exits, so if we just put this here and then we bring in the tailor, you could do something like this. And their roofs are kind of the same color. They don't match 100%, But this is still a pretty okay thing to do, and you can save up space. But, you know, in Foundation, space is really... it can be really cheap. If you're running out of space, I would recommend just squeezing them together, though. Note that the cost of the buildings is 25 gold for the sheep farm, 50 for the weaver, and then another 50 for the tailor. So with a good stall to sell your shirts, and then the tent to go with that, and a warehouse to store all of that, you're looking at about 185 gold for the buildings, and then add on the price of the unlocks and the territory, because you'll likely need an entire territory zone in order to get that done. It's good to have a solid 400 gold in your pocket if you're looking to go from 0 to clothing your people. I would, however, take this in steps if you don't have that huge amount of gold. So yeah. If you're just trying to sell the clothing for profit and aren't really needing to clothe anyone yet, which I would recommend. So my advice would be to not promote anybody to commoner at the beginning. I basically have only one commoner. So you can basically skip the market stall. I really would not recommend any commoners, so that you can set up your economy first, your gold and that, all of that stuff, and then you can start selling your surplus to the people. So let's skip the market stall at first and simply set up our clothing and trade routes so that we can make money before sinking those clothes into our population. So let's remove these for now. Last but not least, last but not least, you're also going to need the workers. I often forget these when I'm making my projects. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. You'll have like a big project and then you're like, oh, I've not been keeping an eye on immigration and I have one unemployed villager. So it is a good idea to have a little crop of unemployed people at all times. So the sheep farm and the weaver each take 2, and then a tailor takes 3. With the transporter and the market worker, that makes 9. Again, if we're taking this into steps, I think 7 is perfectly fine for what we need in order to set up the beginning. So we have our clothing unlocked, we have the big clearing ready to turn into a pasture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this lumber camp that cleared this clearing. I'm just going to take it and move it elsewhere. I don't know where though. Let's see. I think it can go... we're going to be clearing all of this wood in the future, so it's just going to go over here for now. Yeah, we can try destroying these people's fence. It's fine. They don't need it. There's also a metal... oh, I see you were all so busy. There's also a metal thingy here, so when you're building your stuff, I would say that's one thing to be careful of, is try not to build over your natural resources in the ground. Depending on your settings, these ones might be permanent or they might be finite. By default, they are permanent, so if you don't know and if you haven't tweaked the settings, then they're probably infinite. So they're quite valuable to have on the ground. This is an iron supply, which will be useful for tools. And if you'd like to have a tutorial on tool production or common wares or anything else, let me know and we'll maybe get that done. All right, so I would like a sheep farm. Now, obviously we need this area to have space for a mine. So I think I'm gonna make the sheep farm over here. And then all of that can be the pasture. So there it is. And then before I click build, I'm also just going to build a warehouse. We're going to get both of those. I think this should be close enough. There we go. And now we move the sheep farm a little bit over there. So this is a warehouse extension. You can also just build a regular warehouse. If you need an extension that is under progression, that is also the 10 prosperity step, storage improvement, and it basically doubles your storage, which is pretty decent. It does produce extra upkeep, but I believe the upkeep is the same as the regular warehouse, so you're not paying any extra, but you can double up on your workers. All right, let's have that built, and let's build our sheep farm. So they're just gonna build that. Now, the warehouse is optional, but the reason that I recommend the warehouse, even though the production buildings themselves can store a small amount of these materials, I always like to have a good overview of the goods production in my town. Having a larger storage base is going to help you with that a lot. Plus, the warehouse can work as a good point zero distribution spot for any warehouses that want to bring any of the materials in the production chain to a faraway location by using the stock maximum order. We'll talk a little bit more about the warehouse later. First, let's set up Miss Farm. There we go. It is built up. So you can see it has two warnings. It has no workers and it has no pasture. It says missing zone. So it is a paint zone, much like the Forester, if you've already encountered that, where each house has its own zone, or like the farm, the wheat farm. So you cannot paint the pasture using the tool here. You can paint it by clicking on the house and then painting the pasture. Before we paint though, we need to assign the workers. This is kind of important because the feedback message over here is going to tell you if your pasture is large enough for your workers. So if you just put one worker in, you'll get a different number, different amount of like field size than if you have both. So we'll just get 2 shepherds and then we shall start painting. Now you can, here's the thing. I always encourage people to create organic shapes with the pastures, with the fields. But I know that a lot of you out there are sinners. And even though this is a gridless city builder, you love a square. So there is a square option. It's fine. You can do whatever you want. I actually do a lot of squares for my fields and farms. You can see the fields here. I've squared them off. So this is actually fine. But you know, let your spirit run wild with the options. But here's the thing. You can use the square tool, but if you're having trouble drawing straight lines and you would like it to be super straight, here's a little tip that you can do. You can hold down the mouse. So right now, because this is already adequately sized, let's just say we want to shave it down a little bit. You can then click it and then do not move your mouse. Hold your mouse still. Position your camera so that you're looking at the direction that you want to move towards, and then use your WASD keys to move the camera in straight lines. So we're just going to use W. We're going to move up in a straight line. We're going to use A to move left. And then if you want all of your stuff to be in squares, you can just hold it still, and that's how you can get your perfect squares. And there are actually mods. I think they're not working right now, but as of this video coming out, those mods might already be fixed because mods just broke for the release version, but we had this mod in early access where you could set an item on the ground, which would just be there so that you could snap the camera to the same facing. So you could use that trick to create like squares of whatever, squares of housing, squares of farm, squares of everything. Again, personally, maybe not what I would do, but here's a tip for you. A bonus tip in the farming episode. Anyway, let's go. Let's continue. So I'm actually going to make this field until we get the warning that it's too big. You can see how big you can actually make it. And then, only then, I'm going to start to shrink it a little bit. Look at that. That is such huge pasturage. Okay. Okay. I'm going to, break things a little bit. I'm just going to round it out a little bit here so that it's not super straight. There we go. That's kind of okay. I mean, later we'll unlock more of this zone and I can make it a prettier shape. For now, this is good. Okay. Let's assign the warehouse. So, we have our paint, we have our sheep farm all ready to go, and we can let them do their thing. Then let's assign the warehouse. So, I'm going to go wool in one field. cloth in another, and then double clothes. And I'm actually gonna get rid of these clothes that we have here. Did I accidentally buy more clothes? I did not. There we go. Just gonna use that in the middle and then go clothes here. So I go wool, cloth, and double clothes. More on that later. Okay. Now, let's set up our weaver and tailor. So, like I said, I want to have an iron production over here, but honestly, because you can move buildings in Foundation, you could just build stuff here and then deal with moving them later. For the purposes of this tutorial, I will just build this over here. You know what? Maybe we can squeeze them over there, actually. I see a nice location, right? That's good. Don't destroy that house. Ooh, that house has a lot of, like, ghost zoning. Just make sure that the clipping is not horrible. One thing that you have to do with the clipping is you kind of just have to let your imagination be like, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. They can clip a little. It's not the end of the world. All right, we'll put those there. They don't need any additional materials. It's not like with bread. When you're producing bread, you have to keep in mind that your bakery also needs water in addition to the flour that comes from the fields. Luckily, with the tailor and the weaver, you don't need anything like that. All right, let's speed things up and let's get these buildings done. So, of course, it is recommended that you build these quite close to each other, but you don't have to. In Foundation, the world is your oyster. And missing raw materials. What? And the thing is, you can basically build them anywhere, right? You can say, oh, hey, I'm going to put my weaver hut over there, and I'm going to put my tailor over there, and you have your city 3 times the size, and you can do that. If you do that, then the recommended thing is to have wool be straight next to this, to have a warehouse that takes maybe even 2 stocks of wool, so that these reach 100, and then another warehouse on the other end of town, like over here, if your tailor is, you know, you have your outskirts of town over here, and then you have a deep core of the town, and you want other workshops in the deep core, then you have a warehouse here, and you will tell that warehouse like, oh, I want my wool over here, and you say stock maximum. And that will mean that a person from this warehouse is going to go over here and is going to bring it back, and they can take the full 100 in one go, I'm pretty sure, or at least 50. And that's really important because transporters kind of focus their life on that. Otherwise, your weaver, if your weaver is here, is going to spend time doing that. And first of all, I don't think they can carry as much. That might not be true. But more importantly, they're spending their work time doing that. And you don't want them to spend their work time doing that. You want them to spend their work time weaving. So you can always use the warehouses as your logistics network and just build stuff all over town. I do kind of encourage that. I think that's one of the cool things about Foundation is that, like, efficiency is not necessary. The game isn't very hard to, like, succeed on default settings. So there's a lot of freedom. It's very cozy and you can just do whatever you want. And sometimes it can be really fun to do like a production chain. It's almost like Factorio or something where like, I need to deliver the thing from point A to point B and then it gets processed. And then from point B, I take the processed material to point C. So that can be really fun. All right, let's finish the tailor before we continue. And our tailor is done. Okay. Let's assign the workers. Ooh, an immigrant. Wonderful. Okay, so as I said, it's 2 for the weaver and 3 for the tailor. Now let's look back at this. So I was confused by the missing raw materials because this doesn't need any raw materials, but they're just using that icon to signify missing mature livestock. So the way that the sheep farm works and the dairy farm as well, is these animals, they get spawned. Back in early access, we could just spawn them ourselves. It was really funny. You could just like click a button and you could spawn infinite sheep. And there was this hidden black sheep. Anyway, so these sheep are still growing. So it's not a bad idea to set up your sheep a little bit earlier in order for them to grow, and then get your tailor and weaver. But I mean, this is going to be kind of your bottleneck, right? Is finding a decent location in order to get all of this stuff. But yeah, so that's it. Let's allow the sheep to grow. We can look at them wiggle. They have little wiggly bums now. They used to not have them. They used to just be sheep on wheels. I miss the sheep on wheels. Oh, look at it wiggle! Cute. Anyhow, I'm gonna let the sheep grow a little bit and then we can continue. The cool thing about the pasture is that it's really easy to repaint and move, because anything that you do to it will just actively the pasture's gone, the pasture's back. But once you've selected sort of a permanent area for your pasture, I do encourage using a fence decoration. So back in the day, we didn't have a lot of fence options. So like barbarians, we would just have to place them one by one from the decoration menu. So it would straight up just be like this fence. And I would just go, oh no, I would use this fence. Just go poop, 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 and that took forever. Luckily, we have now been gifted with fortifications, as well as the other walls, which is this village fence here. And then you can use the wooden or the wattle fence, or even the stone fence. If you've been to like Ireland and Scotland, they have a lot of stone fences out around their sheep. I like to use the wooden fence, and then you would just sort of build around it. And you can make your fences straight or rounded. So again, kind of to fit whatever vibe you're doing. We can just kind of round that there. Look at that. Lovely. But for me personally, because we're doing a tutorial, I'm not going to make this permanent, but it can look so nice. It looks so nice if your sheep are behind a fence. Just remember to keep a little opening. Oh, and the other advantage of the fence is that it prevents people from trampling your lovely pastures, because people will walk wherever they want and they will make roads. So your farmers will not make roads when they go out and shear them. The shearing, it's happening. She's doing it. So this does not create a road, but if we had a building project here, or if you had somebody walking across, like you had some buildings there and some buildings here and people walked across, that makes roads, and then your pasture will be ugly. So building fences around it, very important actually. All right, so they are making some wool. And then once enough wool is created, our guys should go and get it. Oh, it's waiting for workers. They're currently on their idle time. That reminds me. So a very common question that we get is, how many weavers should I add per sheep farm? How many tailors should I add per weaver? How many tailors for X amount of commoners? Because Foundation is so organic in the way that it does stuff, there's so many variables that are going to be affecting your numbers here. First of all, workers spend their work time to actually move to their place of work, meaning the more efficient the routes, the closer they work to their leisure locations, the more efficient they're going to be. Next, they also have levels of skill at their job. So all of these should be level 1 shepherds, but they eventually get higher skill. This affects their production rate. Different classes of villager also have different efficiency at different jobs, and they spend different amounts of time working versus filling their needs. So ultimately, there isn't a very easy like 1 to 1 to 1, that's your max efficiency. This isn't like Anno or something. If you remember Anno, it had very specific production calculators, where it's like 2 of this into 1 of this. It's 100% yield. There's not stuff like that in Foundation. It's all much more organic. So what I would recommend is always just start with 1 of each and then fill in your production chain where you spot the need. This is the case for most production chains. There's only a few exceptions where I already start in with a big imbalance, like 3 wheat farms per 1 windmill is my go-to, like a fully staffed windmill. And then if I'm still hitting 0 wheat, then I add another wheat farm. And then once, the wheat starts to go over that, then we think about adding more stuff. This is another reason why I like to get the warehouse involved, because that will help things a lot. Outside of its logistical benefits, the higher amounts just let me keep an eye on how much each step in the production chain is using and how each step is going. Over 100 wool, that means we're not using enough of it, so we need an extra weaver. If the wool is constantly hovering under 50 or even hitting 0, that means that we gotta add a little bit of production there. So we gotta add another farmer or something. So that's something that's really cool when you have a warehouse as your go-between. And you could really see, I kind of want my wool to not be at 0 at all times. But if the wool is 0 while the cloth and the clothes are maximum, that's good. With cloth, do keep in mind again that we need more of it because it is also a building material. So you should always have a little bit of a surplus of cloth. So wool can hit 0 as long as your other 2 are good. But if your wool is hitting 0 and your other 2 are also low, like your cloth, which is your second production, and clothes, which is your final point in the chain, in that case you want to have more wool. So it's just nice to have a warehouse so that you get these amounts slightly higher than just the 50s that are in these houses by default. With cloth, it's also a good idea to have it distributed around your city. If your city is huge... Ooh, what do they want over here? If your city is huge, then you probably want cloth at different locations. This is a pretty small town, so I don't need that. But if you have cloth if you have a big city, you want cloth in different places so that your builders are a little bit more efficient. And of course, you want to deliver your clothes near to where your market is at. Again, this is a pretty small town, so I don't think we need a second warehouse, especially because we have only 1 commoner. But yeah, when it comes to how many production parts in a chain you should build, I would say just start with 1 of each and then balance it as you see how your resources are going. This is a reminder that you can also go into your resources overview and you can just find the resources that you want to really keep an eye on, like the common clothes, and you can favorite them and they will show up over there. I would even say that giving advice about how many things to put anywhere, like 2 to 4 to whatever, 2 wool things to 2 weavers. This early on, I would be very hesitant to give specific advice about this because production rates might get adjusted for balance for various industries, making the advice in this video age poorly. So that's kind of why I'm just saying go 1 for each and adjust it. It's the best way to do it. It's kind of how I did it even after 600 hours in early access. I would always just be like, okay, I kind of have an idea of what I need, but every city's different. Every city's walkers are going to be slightly different. So that's my advice. So we've set up our production chain. Now let's do the next step, and that is we should start selling our clothes in we should start selling them first to the international thing. That's the thing I didn't mention yet. So I believe I've already unlocked the trade route earlier. Yep, there it is. And we can start selling clothes there. So we're going to go over to our resources overview. Then we're going to go to common clothes and we're going to say, I'm selling everything above. And because we have storage for 2 things in the warehouse, I'm going to say everything above 150. with something like your common clothes or any other ingredient that you are also selling to your people, so you're providing it at a market, I would say set that at a pretty high value so that you can notice it if it starts dropping below that. So if we are supplying people with clothes or berries or fish, and I have all of these at 150, as long as this number is above 150, that means that our production is healthy. If it start dropping below 150, then that's maybe like, oh, that's concerning. If it starts dropping below 100, that's maybe a warning to say, okay, it's time to shore up that material. Let's set up new production before your stocks start hitting zero and people get upset. You don't need to store stuff in your warehouses. Obviously you do if you want to sell it to other towns, but you don't need to store it if you want to just sell it to your own people. But it is good to have these higher amounts so that you have a good overview of like, oh, okay, my wool, which I could have, 500 of or whatever you've set up your warehouses to be, is at zero. So clearly that means we're not producing nearly enough amount of wool. So whatever your value is, however many like slots you have reserved for that material, you kind of want to adjust your number to that. And just make sure that it never, hits zero if it's something that's also at the market. Or if it's a tool that is produced, a basic resource that then needs to be used in something else that's going to be then sold at the market. All right, speaking of the market, now it's time to build it. This is the final step in the cloth shenanigans. So we shall go over here. Suspicious amounts. Okay, good. We shall go over here and let us first unlock the goods market. So that's the other 50 gold cost. This gives us the goods parts. And you can click your regular market. If you have different market stalls around the town, that can actually look really cool. So a friend of mine actually likes to build the stalls next to the buildings that sort of produce the stuff. So for example, for your baker, you could have like a bread stall over here. I mean, obviously I have a house here in the way, so for me that won't work. But you could just, make the tent here, and then it's like the stall is coming out of the building, and then people could come and visit that. Or the clothes stall, you could kind of put it here next to the tailor. So maybe we go with this or the red roof or whatever. Just attach to that. Oh, it was the other way around. Whoop. And there you have it, and you could sell it here. I tend to like to have a central market and then expand from there and add little supplementary stalls around like that and hide them around the town. Now, don't look at my village center. My village center is a mess right now. Do not judge me for my village center. We're gonna have to redo the town center at some point, but that's a story for another matter. So we're gonna put in a goods stall over here, and we are going to add there's already a blue for the fish. I think green could work for cloth, right? Once again, I've put it the wrong way around, so let me just select these two and turn them and put them over here. That seems pretty agreeable to me. Oh, this is our commoner house. Right in front of the commoner house as well. Perfect. You have your market with your own stuff right there. You can put a little good stall decoration. Where should we put it? Can't put it over here because it looks like it makes the house angry. Oh no, we can squeeze it over here. Perfect. All right. Let's build that. And there it is. Don't forget to assign your market tender and actually assign the resource, the common clothes, to sell. And our warehouse is right over there. So I would say that's pretty close. We don't need to actually build an auxiliary warehouse. But I would recommend that if you have your production far away from the market. Again, depending on the amount of commoners you have and stuff. I only have one commoner, so however this market is going to be stocked, it's going to be stocked for a while. Do keep in mind, if you're going to be careful about promoting people to commoner, which I recommend, I actually go without promoting people for a very long time. There used to be requirements that you had to have like at least this many commoners to unlock the next stage, but now you don't have to, which is pretty cool. But you will probably have soldiers and monks, nuns. So like monastery people and military people. Those people are much more like likely to be promoted, and also much earlier they're going to need it. I think the soldiers, even at the lowest tier, they need clothes. And then the monks, I think monks still at the second tier, just like your regular people. But soldiers are going to be needing clothes. So keep an eye on that. If you're like, oh, well, I've not increased the amount of commoners, but why are my clothes running out so quickly? You might have added more soldiers and didn't account that. Also, you could probably put a clothes stall near your fort if your fort is somewhere far away for like roleplay or aesthetic purposes. Giving a few of these next to the fort, that can be very, very useful. All right. Well, I think that's everything. We're selling our cloth. Let's actually check with our bailiff. She's not gone to buy them yet. She's on her free time now. Let's see. We don't have any clothes in the market. Come on. What about you? You need to get these. Oh, heading to work. You did it. Okay, they're selling it. They're selling it. Let's see if our bailiff is going to go buy some. Oh, she's just chilling. Girl, you got nothing to do. She moved to another bench. That is a very relatable worker. Come on, girl. Get those clothes. We made them just for you. Yes. Yes. There we go. Production successful. Ooh, there we go. Well done, everybody. Congratulations on setting up your first clothing industry, and most likely your first goods production chain. Now it's all set up. Let me know if you'd like to learn about any of the other chains. And so yeah. I hope you found this quick tutorial useful. I mean, I say quick tutorial. It was just a concise tutorial for my purposes, but it's still a long video. This was a general, not a general at all. This was a special episode of our Let's Play series. I figured because our step was to make the cloth, we could just make it into a tutorial that's very focused. So if you'd like to see more of our town, you can check in with the rest of the series playlist for some more relaxed gameplay videos. I share a lot of hints and tips and tricks in the other videos as well, but they're often not focused on one specific subject. So let me know if you preferred this to that, where like the second and the first video were kind of all over the place, where you're starting to build out your town. It's kind of hard to focus on just one thing. We're like, oh, we need food, and we need this, and we need attacks, and we need trade. But if you'd like to see more tutorials, let me know what you'd like to know about in the comments, and we will make it more focused. And if you'd like them to be shorter, let me know, and I will do my best. If you enjoyed the video, though, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more Let's Plays, tutorials, and first impressions of indie and city building and management games. Currently, we've got this series going, which is a Foundation Let's Play. We are doing it twice a week, and then we also have an Odd Realm, which is kind of like a Dwarf Fortress game, once a week, and then we do a bunch of other games too. We're looking at all sorts of stuff. So if you like this kind of content, chill content, all of that, please subscribe. You can also come say hi live on Twitch at twitch.tv/lulling, where you can also support me by subscribing or using your Twitch Prime sub. If you have Amazon Prime, then do a Twitch Prime sub for free. At no cost to you and at benefit to me. That's a nice way to support me. Thanks if you do that. All right. And if you want a shout out, you can do it while I'm live. And I'll be like, oh, thanks. Anyway, that's it from me. Have a nice rest of your life. Stay solidary. Goodbye.